Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell back in 2010 vowing to obstruct legislation for purely political purposes to try to keep then-President Obama from being elected to a second term. He failed then, but he is at it again now. NBC News reporting that, quote, inside a special closed-door Republican meeting on Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell cast doubt on an emerging deal to tighten immigration laws, citing GOP opposition to its provisions and telling senators that linking the two measures could also sink Ukraine aid. Senator McConnell adding that the politics on this have changed. Those politics are purely the desire to see Donald Trump reelected. NBC News adding that, quote, Trump's desire to wield chaos at the border as a political weapon against President Joe Biden in a general election campaign is a factor in the ongoing congressional negotiations. McConnell telling Republicans, we don't want to do anything to undermine him. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and co-chair of President Biden's re-election campaign. Senator, thanks for being with us. I want to take this in two parts. First, let's talk about foreign aid. Then let's talk about immigration. When it comes to this aid, what are the stakes of an inevitable delay?
The stakes are incredibly high here, Alicia. The supplemental that President Biden sent to the Senate and asked us to pass now many months ago includes several different pockets of absolutely critical spending. Support for Ukraine in their ongoing fight for freedom against Russian aggression. Support for humanitarian assistance, critically needed in Gaza, but in a dozen other countries, from Jordan to Lebanon to Sudan to Syria to Afghanistan. Support for our Indo-Pacific partners, Taiwan and many other countries, and support for Israel. There was also a specific request for $14 billion in border security funding to hire more border security patrol agents, more Customs and Border Patrol, more lawyers to handle quickly the asylum cases of folks who are coming to this country seeking asylum. What is concerning about the development that there are Republicans, egged on by former President Trump, now cheering for a failure of the border security deal that's been negotiated over the last couple of months, is that rather than solving the problem, they may now be trying to instead have an election issue for the fall at the behest of former President Trump. If they do that, they will own responsibility for refusing, once again, to come to the table to negotiate to a good resolution and to try to fix the problem together with President Biden and Democrats who are willing partners in trying to address our border challenges.
I want to underscore some of the elements of this immigration deal, the contours of which were still coming together. As you well know, there were a lot of advocates who didn't like this deal for the exact opposite reasons that some Republicans were suspicious of it, which is those advocates. They thought Democrats were giving up too much in the way of parole authority, expulsion authority. What does it then tell you that Republicans, who, as you said, they are supposedly hair on fire over the U.S.-Mexico border, are suddenly walking away from this deal in favor of something theoretically more restrictionist and ugly like H.R. 2, which they know they can never get done?
So, Alicia, there's two very strongly different factions in the Senate Republican caucus. Those who don't want a deal, who are listening to former President Trump, who don't support additional appropriations or support for Ukraine, who just don't want to see us get more done. And it'd be hard for the House Republican caucus to get less done than they've accomplished in this Congress so far. Then there's others who still want us to move forward. And not to contradict some of the reporting you just put up, but in personal, direct conversations today on the floor of the Senate with McConnell, with Thune, with Cornyn, with Lankford, and with our negotiators, Senators Murphy and Sinema, I'm convinced that Republican leadership in the Senate still wants to get this deal done because they badly want to support Ukraine. But there is a significant group in the Republican caucus here in the Senate, the Freedom Caucus of the Senate, that wants us to get nothing done.
Well, help me understand then, when Mitch McConnell says the politics have changed, your sense of what it is he's referring to?
So he explained that in much more detail in a direct conversation we had today and made forceful statements in front of his caucus at lunch today. He is recognizing that his caucus is divided, that there are some very loud voices that are opposing the border security deal that Senator Lankford, at Senator McConnell's encouragement and direction, negotiated. So Senator McConnell's asserted he still wants to move ahead with aid to Ukraine and a border security deal. And Senators Thune and Cornyn, who are his principal lieutenants in his caucus, also repeated that in the hallway and on the floor. But there are very loud voices, extreme voices in the Senate Republican caucus who want to make sure that we're not successful, that we can't come together. A compromise, Alicia, is something where no one is happy, but where we make real progress, where there will be both Democrats and Republicans supporting it. They want to make sure that there is still a serious and significant challenge at the border so that former President Trump has it as a core issue to cudgel President Biden with in the fall. That's unfortunate. That's failed leadership. But Senator McConnell still wants to get a package of aid done for Ukraine and border security.
Senator, as you were trying to hash this all out in Congress, there's also sort of a subplot here that is emerging out of the state of Texas, a back and forth with the United States Supreme Court. The Texas Tribune reporting the Texas National Guard and state troopers are still rolling out concertina wire and preventing Border Patrol agents from accessing most of Shelby Park, a 47-acre Eagle Pass park that sits on the bank of the Rio Grande, where thousands of migrants have crossed. And this is despite the Supreme Court ruling against Texas Governor Greg Abbott earlier this week. It feels like a step in the continuation of Republicans exploiting concerns about immigration to embrace authoritarianism, right? To say we are going to go it alone. The rules do not apply to us.
Well, I thought it was striking that the Supreme Court recently ruled that border control that the Border Patrol agents should have access to the border of the United States. That was a broad coalition of justices that rendered that. I've been to that park. I've been to that point in Eagle Pass, a bipartisan delegation that included Senators Langford and Murphy and Cornyn and others went to visit El Paso and Yuma last year. And what I thought was truly tragic was the recent event where several migrants drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande, and where that concertina wire was kept to prevent Border Patrol agents from coming to their aid and saving their lives. This is an ongoing humanitarian crisis at our southern border. We need to do things to reduce the number of folks who are making an expensive, a long, and a difficult journey from their countries of origin. We need to invest in stabilizing those countries and improving the conditions in countries throughout our region. But we also need to make sure that it's clear that the federal government is principally responsible for immigration and border security. And we need to invest in improving border security so that we can develop a path towards an immigration system that is safe, legal, and humane.